My thermostat read 41 degrees. My kids wrapped in every blanket we owned. And the propane gauge showed 0. All 60 houses on our street were freezing that same night, while Karen sat behind her frosted window, space heater humming, smiling. I'm Nora, mother of 2, married to a firefighter, and we'd bought our starter home here for the sense of community. Our neighborhood shared one massive propane tank, split by usage, managed entirely by the HOA board and its elected president. When Karen won the presidency 2 winters ago, she promised efficiency, transparency, and lower bills for every single homeowner here. Instead, she centralized the billing system, demanding all propane payments route through her personal management account instead of the utility. Neighbors shrugged it off as paperwork, trusting the woman who baked cookies for the welcome committee and waved at every child. Then February's invoice arrived, triple the usual amount, citing a vague infrastructure maintenance fee nobody remembered voting on. I asked for an itemized breakdown at the next meeting, and Karen's smile tightened like a fist behind red lipstick. She said questioning the board's judgment was toxic behavior and reminded me my dues could always increase for troublemakers. Other neighbors murmured agreement with me under their breath, but nobody wanted to be the next name on her list. That week, my mailbox held a fine notice for an unauthorized garden gnome that had sat there for 3 years. Karen installed a physical padlock on the shared propane valve, claiming it prevented unauthorized tampering by residents. Only she and her hand-picked safety officer, her cousin Dale, held keys to the lock now. Deliveries still arrived monthly, yet somehow our usage reports showed shortages nobody could explain or verify. I called the propane company directly, and the dispatcher said full tankers arrived on schedule. Gallons matching contracts exactly. That number didn't match what Karen reported to the board, a gap of hundreds of gallons vanishing monthly. When I raised it publicly, she accused me of harassing volunteers and moved to fine my family for slander. 2 elderly neighbors, the Hendersons, lost heat first, their pipes groaning, their old dog shivering under 3 quilts. Karen told them the outage was temporary maintenance, yet trucks kept delivering fuel that never reached our meters. I started a shared spreadsheet, quietly asking neighbors to log their propane readings before and after each delivery. 12 families joined within days, terrified but tired of watching their bills climb while their homes grew colder. Dale, the cousin with keys, got nervous, avoiding eye contact whenever I mentioned delivery schedules at the mailbox. One night I saw a tanker truck leave our complex, then stop 3 streets over at a private garage. The garage belonged to Karen's brother-in-law, who I later learned ran a small independent propane resale business. My hands shook writing that down, realizing this wasn't mismanagement. It was theft dressed up as leadership. I brought my notes to the board treasurer, who quietly admitted Karen controlled every ledger without independent audits. The treasurer resigned the next morning, citing personal reasons. Though her eyes told a different, frightened story, Karen responded by raising my dues again and sending a certified letter threatening a lien on my house. For 2 weeks, deliveries seemed normal, bills stabilized, and Karen suddenly offered an amnesty waiving old fines community-wide. Neighbors relaxed, grateful for warmth, assuming the pressure of scrutiny had finally forced her to behave honestly. I kept logging numbers anyway, my husband urging caution, reminding me predators go quiet before their next strike. The calm felt staged, rehearsed, like a storm gathering strength behind a suspiciously clear blue sky. Then a brutal cold front hit, and Karen announced emergency conservation, locking the tank valve completely overnight. She claimed a supplier shortage, yet the same tanker truck rolled toward her brother-in-law's garage that same evening. 60 homes went dark and cold within hours, furnaces dying, children coughing, Elderly residents calling ambulances for hypothermia symptoms. The Hendersons were hospitalized for exposure. Their dog found shivering alone. Their heater silent for 11 straight hours. Neighbors banged on Karen's door demanding answers, while she filmed them through her Ring camera, calling it harassment. She posted online that entitled residents were mobbing her family over routine maintenance, painting herself as the victim. I compiled everything: spreadsheets, delivery logs,
Garage photo.
and sent copies to our state propane safety regulator. A whistleblower neighbor, ironically Dale himself, texted me anonymously admitting he'd been ordered to falsify weekly delivery reports. Dale said Karen skimmed roughly 30% of every delivery, reselling it through her brother-in-law's cash-only route. That 30%, over 2 years, totaled nearly 500 gallons stolen straight from freezing families like mine. I forwarded Dale's message, screenshots, and timestamps to the regulator, requesting an emergency inspection before someone died. Karen sensed the walls closing in and scheduled a community healing meeting, clearly hoping to control the narrative first. She invited a local news reporter herself, confident her charm would spin theft into misunderstanding once again. I quietly invited the state regulator too, along with our county sheriff's fraud division, without telling anyone else. Karen doubled down at the mailbox, hissing that I'd regret making this personal once the board finished with me. That threat, recorded on my phone, became the final piece of evidence I needed before the meeting. The night before the meeting, temperatures dropped to 11 degrees, the coldest snap our town had seen in years. I barely slept, cross-referencing every gallon, every date, every name Karen had fined for asking simple questions. My husband reminded me firefighters see what silence costs, and encouraged me to speak plainly, without fear. Karen tried erasing digital delivery records that morning, but the propane company kept independent backups she never controlled. Dale, terrified of prosecution, agreed to testify if it meant avoiding charges as an unwilling accomplice. I printed 60 copies of the gallon discrepancy report, one for every freezing household on our street. Snow fell thick that afternoon, blanketing driveways, as neighbors bundled children into cars for the emergency meeting. Karen arrived smiling, unaware 2 uniformed officers and a state regulator sat quietly in the back row. The community hall filled fast, 60 families shivering in coats, breath visible even indoors from the broken heat. Karen opened with practiced warmth, blaming supply chain issues for our suffering, urging patience and unity instead. I stood, hands trembling, and asked her directly why delivered gallons never matched what residents actually received. She laughed it off, calling me dramatic, until I placed 60 printed reports on the podium beside her. The regulator stood, introduced himself, and confirmed our independent delivery logs matched the propane company's official shipment records exactly. Gasps rippled through the room as the numbers proved nearly 500 missing gallons over 2 winters. Dale stood next, voice shaking, admitting Karen ordered him to falsify meter readings and hide diverted shipments. Karen's face went white, then furious, insisting this was a coordinated conspiracy against her hardworking family. The sheriff's deputy asked to see her brother-in-law's garage records, and her composure finally, completely cracked. Then came the twist nobody expected. Her own son, living with his father, had been freezing too. Karen had cut off his propane months earlier during a custody dispute, using cold as quiet punishment. Her ex-husband stood, reading text messages where Karen threatened to let him freeze until custody terms changed. The room fell silent, realizing her cruelty wasn't limited to neighbors. It was simply who she'd always been. Officers escorted Karen outside for questioning as neighbors watched, disbelief melting slowly into quiet. Exhausted relief. The propane company unlocked the tank within the hour, restoring heat to every freezing home before midnight. Karen faced charges for fraud, theft, and utility tampering, later ordered to repay every stolen gallon's value. The HOA board dissolved itself, replaced by an elected committee requiring independent audits and third-party propane oversight. Warmth returned to our street that winter, and for the first time in months, we all breathed easy together.